I am here with my dear friend, Brittany Pettibone. We're going to have a nice little comfy chat. I'm sorry, I'm hearing my own voice now. Nice little comfy chat about things that are going on in her life and her book and patriotism and the country. And of course, she has some big news, which she's announced on her channel and on her Instagram with the loveliest picture. So welcome, Brittany. If you just want to tell people a little bit about what's going on in your life and your book.
Yeah,
and
a whole lot of things. Well, I guess the most important thing, though, is that my husband and I are expecting a baby. So I'm 3 months along. And of course, yeah, we're very, very, very happy about it. And then along with that, yes, I recently released a new book, which I've been working on for a while, since like the summer of 2018, and I kept putting it aside because more and more crazy stuff was happening in my life. And I was like, it's too early to write about this. I just need to like wait a little bit.
Yeah.
So it's called Patriots Not Welcome. And it's essentially a memoir about everything I've been through since I first started politics. And it really sounds so narcissistic to be like, I wrote a memoir about my life. But really, I feel like this kind of justifies it due to the fact that so many crazy things have happened to my husband and me. And so there was a lot to fit in the book, and I even had to cut out some stuff because there was so many crazy things. The main reason I wanted to write it is because I saw that they can essentially unperson anybody they want now, down to like erasing your website from the internet. They can just contact your host and get you kicked off. And so I realized the only thing that's going to remain about a lot of people at the end of the day are these mainstream media articles that just totally, completely twist the truth and lie about you. And so I wanted to write a book because that's a bit harder to destroy every copy, because that could be, from my own words, something I put many years into compiling all the sources, the truth, and then put that out there. So I'm so happy that it's finally done and we can move on to this next chapter now. But I've gotten a lot of really good feedback. People really like the book, which makes me so happy because I didn't know like if it was good.
Oh,
or
it has
not.
great Amazon reviews.
Know.
Yeah.
So it it's going good. That's great. And now I'm just focusing on YouTube, at least till I give birth, and then having a healthy pregnancy. So
that's so great. Congratulations. I'm really happy to hear it. And as far as your book is concerned, you guys have to deal with a lot of stuff that people in America typically don't have to deal with. I know that there have been some banking situations, which really frightens me when they start to freeze bank accounts and things like that. And I know a lot of things have happened to Laura Towler and her husband recently. And I think Europeans are dealing with an entire different set of circumstances. If you could go into that a little bit, at least what you shared in the book.
I was actually surprised that we saw it in like Austria and Germany before the UK, because the UK, of all places, feels like the worst on planet Earth, really. But surprisingly, Austria has just completely plummeted since the Freedom Party left the government in 2019. There was a huge scandal and the Vice Chancellor Strache resigned. And then we had the conservative Austrian People's Party, Sebastian Kurz. He's terrible. He's not conservative. He's terrible. Now he's in coalition with the Socialists, the Green Party, and we have an absolutely terrible government, and it's only gotten far more totalitarian since. But Martin's been facing a lot of repression here even before then, because it's the same in the US. Like the right wing, the Republicans, they don't really do anything to protect people. They're just kind of there and cowards with no spine. So it's kind of the same. And so Martin was banned from like somewhere between 15 and 20 private banks. And it got to the point where Austria had to legally give him a bank account. It's like a limited one, some special type of bank account. But legally, he has to be able to have one to pay for like rent and stuff. But
so they can take his tax money and everything.
Yeah, exactly. And the tax rate here is insane. Like, absolutely insane. I think if you make like 30,000 euros a year, then the tax rate is something like 45%.
That is obscene.
It's insane. It's really, really high. I was looking at it because I have to pay taxes in Austria now. I file in the US, but since I'm a permanent resident here, I pay there. And I was looking at it, I'm like, oh my gosh, this is insane. So I guess you can be a little more thankful in the US.
I suppose, but how can they do that and then give you no protection from tyranny at all? It's like at this point in our country and in your country, we are totally justified in just deciding not to pay any taxes.
Yeah. I most of it goes into like medical things and stuff. So like you can go, if you go to a private clinic, then you have to pay. But if it's not a private one, then they pay for most of it. And it's just kind of how it is, like the healthcare system, which, you know, a lot of leftists in America love, but you know, there are arguments that like it's not as good.
Yeah.
So, or there's long waiting lines. So if you're going to like a gynecologist, for example, that's not a private one, and you sign up as a new customer, the wait's like 6 months. So
what if you get pregnant unexpectedly? What are you?
Yeah, that's why I'm going to a private one. Yeah, because I was like, I'll have given birth by then. You know, not 6 months, but basically. Yeah. So it might not be 45. I think it's 35%. And if you make over 100,000, you're paying 55%. It goes up crazily. But yeah. So if you make $1 million, you're paying 55% of that.
Oh gosh, can you imagine realizing how much money you've given to the government after a lifetime of working? I would never calculate that number.
Yeah, but they can also just ban anything they want, because so even if I know like in Canada, they've declared the Proud Boys a terrorist organization or something like that. But in Austria, they've just banned my husband's movement, not his movement. They've banned the symbol and the name. Just because, and they did that as a response to the Islamic terror attack that happened last year. So they created an anti-terror package, and in that they banned the Generation Identity name and logo, and his new movement, the Austrians, name and logo, even though they've never committed a crime, never advocated for violence. They had nothing to do with the Islamic terror attack. None of that. They've been investigated and put on trial and always perfectly acquitted. But I think it's kind of like, you know how you always have to like appeal to both sides, like, well, look, we're going after the right wing too, you know, see, that's kind of why they do it.
So how is his movement restricted? How is your movement restricted?
I had to delete every single video that I had ever had with the logo in it, which was like 20 videos. So if you look on my channel, even
to travel,
just no, because I live in Austria.
Oh, okay.
So it's banned here. And so also in my book, I couldn't source any of my videos that had like the GI flag, the Generation Identity flag. It all had to be deleted, or you'll be fined, you know, a crazy amount. So
do you guys have any issue traveling within the Schengen zone?
No, because no, not in the Schengen zone. But obviously, Martin's permanently banned from the UK, which is outside the EU now. But I don't know if I'm permanently banned, but I don't want to try to go back. I know I was banned temporarily. I just have zero interest in going back to that country ever again.
I know. Yeah. And what about the US? What is your travel restriction like there?
I can enter the US fine, but I doubt like my husband ever will be able to. We're not even going to try to legally fight it. I don't think, it's just not worth it.
On what grounds have they restricted his travel to the US?
They just revoked his ESTA visa. They never, as far as I know, I don't know what the exact reason was, but it was after he received the donation. So, you know, this is a whole other story. For those who don't know, in January 2019, that was a year before the Christchurch terror attack, he received a donation from the man who committed the terror attack. But of course, Martin didn't know who he was, never met him. Didn't know he was a violent, crazy psychopath. And this guy also donated to multiple other people on the right wing, which we found out very recently from the 500-page report that the New Zealand Royal Commission recently released. And a lot of names that you would know, which I'm not going to mention because I'm not going to drag them into this, because they obviously didn't know either and would never have condoned this. So they're against violence just as much as everybody else. But I only mention it because Martin was the only one internationally targeted, went through over a year-long investigation, 2 house raids, and had his reputation completely destroyed. And, you know, mine as well. They investigated me too, because at the time we were engaged. So, that was a crazy ordeal. And I talk about the whole thing in detail in my book, how it all went down, the house raid and the interrogation and everything. It was such a crazy day. But of course, it can happen at any time here for any reason in Austria. Later on, both those house raids were declared illegal by the High Court of Austria. So, but, you know, it was already too late. They had already done the house raid and took everything and, you know, seen what they want to see. So here they have something like, they have a few thousand hate speech trials in Austria every year. And there's only 8.5 million people in Austria. So it's like way smaller than California. Yeah. But Yeah, and they're rising every year. You can look. A few years ago, it was like 200 a year. Now it's like on 2 to 3,000. So
Martin, the
yeah.
most dangerous man in the world.
Yeah. But I mean, like they'll always try these things, but then it never actually comes to anything. It just makes a good media story. Like, oh, the bad man once again. And then it turns into nothing. And then they don't report that it turned into nothing.
Why do
Although
you think they've chosen
um,
him?
him, because of how effective he
Mm.
is. Yeah, because he really did a lot and was annoying them after a while, like with the UN Migration Pact, with the Defend Europe missions, with his movement, which was very successful, doing very well. So they make an example out of the people who are effective and extremely active and dedicating most of their life to it, like Martin is.
Right.
It's all he does every day. So yeah, that's why I would say they tend to not really care about the people who aren't really getting anything done.
But it's almost laughable, especially knowing him on a personal level, to see
I know
these
he's so
articles.
nice.
He's an affable gentleman.
Yes,
It's
he is.
like this guy, most dangerous guy in the world. Seriously?
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
But I think
Um,
he's been demonized worse in the media, perhaps than anybody I can think of that's
yeah,
on the right. And
yeah,
of
I would
course you
agree.
have.
Yeah, I think him much more though. It's funny they can never ever quote like point to anything I've said or done. It's just, oh, I interviewed this person one time, or yeah, just stupid stuff like that. Or I put out this tweet which must have meant this, even though that's not what I said. This is like
Right.
the kind of stuff. Um, yeah, it's really crazy. But with Martin, the lies about him are absolutely insane. But it's very hard to sue. It's actually easier to sue for libel in Europe, but not internationally. So all the US people libeling him, there's
Is
no
there a
way.
lower standard for libel?
Yeah, you can actually it's much easier. Yeah, there are
Ah,
clear rules surrounding it for sure.
that's interesting. In the United States,
Mhm.
very difficult, like nearly
Yeah, very
impossible.
difficult.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So you've moved to Austria. I saw a
Mhm.
video of you speaking German. I was very impressed.
Oh,
Uh,
thanks.
and you were driving a stick shift,
It's a
and
really
Martin
hard language. They really are.
Martin was like super.
Yeah, I know. They always super, yeah.
I thought it was so
Okay.
funny. But since you moved, do you feel like your sense of patriotism towards America, especially, has shifted, has changed?
No, I wouldn't say that, but I have a sense of the world on a deeper level, I would say. I don't know, maybe it's if you don't travel or something. Maybe it was just me. I can't apply this to other people, but I just had the sense that like America was the center of the world, which only makes sense if you're not traveling a lot and actually seeing and experiencing other things. But I didn't really think of the world much outside of America. And now I think of it, in a completely different way, especially because I also feel extremely attached to Europe, specifically Germany and Austria. Like I'm half German. I have many living relatives now in Germany that I can go visit. So it's always been my roots. And I grew up with a lot of German culture from my mom, like a lot of German recipes, fairy tales. We have a lot of books in German. Just I studied it for a little while. So yeah, I've always had a connection there more than any other place outside of the US. So I definitely still I'm an American patriot still, of course, but I also feel I can't deny I feel a very deep connection also to Europe, specifically Germany and Austria by extension. Even though Austrians and Germans don't like when you like lump them together.
No,
That's a
they
big
really
no-no,
don't.
especially the Austrians. We are Austrians. We are not German. Yeah.
They do kind of view Germans as a lesser class of people. I noticed when I was traveling.
In a joking way, though. It's very playful. There's a lot of
Is it in
Germans there.
jest?
Yeah, it's more in jest. It's not like they'll make fun of their food and our language and our dialect is better. And because like it's German, but they have a lot of different words. Like um, tomato is tomat, like tomaten, tomatoes in Germany, but in Austria it's Paradise. So just like that, they have
Right.
different ones, and you have to learn them. Also, there's different slang or different dialects. There's 9 Bundesländer. I don't know what that is. And it's like states, federal states in Austria, and there's a different dialect in each, and they sound totally different. I still struggle to understand certain
So are
words.
you learning like a specific dialect that's like Austro-German?
I guess like I'm just learning the Austrian German, but maybe my dialect will turn out eventually when I'm really good enough to be more Viennese, because I'm in Vienna and that's what I'm exposed to the most. But I definitely, like, when I hear somebody from like Steiermark, I'm like, oh my gosh, it's so different than like what I'm used to hearing, which is in Austria. It's one of the
But
federal states.
you just learned German, traditional German first.
No, I'm learning Austrian German because I have to take
Okay.
courses from the government, and they teach Austrian German because they want you to be able to understand and get around in Austria. But I think Germans, well, they'll understand what you're saying
So it's
enough.
pretty close.
Yeah, it's pretty close. It's more of like the you can compare it different accents, the dialects. Like a very, like in the UK, all these different dialects that like accents, and sometimes it's even hard to understand them. Or like when Count Dankula speaks, sometimes I'm like, what are you saying? But it's English, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of how I would compare it. And then there are certain different words in the same way that in like England, they use a lot of different English words than we do in the US.
Right.
So that's what I would say.
Oh, sorry guys, that was a bit of a tangent.
Yeah.
What I was going to ask you about patriotism, do you separate patriotism from upholding Western tradition? Do you see it as love of an individual country? I'm really struggling right now with patriotism for the United States of America. I've lost a lot of appreciation of our founding values, and I just see our country going down the tubes. And so I kind of have shifted to this this Western tradition. Like that's really what I need to hold in my heart. How do you see patriotism? You said you're still an American patriot.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. But I mean, I guess it's kind of a complicated question. Do you mean that you could live anywhere then? It doesn't have to be the US. And if the US was destroyed and you moved elsewhere, it wouldn't matter to you. It's more of just the.
I mean, I see the decline of this country, and it's breaking my heart. It's making me really black-pilled. So I obviously still love America in that sense. But the more that I see the unwinding of America and the degradation of its founding values, the more I can see that they were fundamentally flawed. And I used to believe that it was just the execution that we have failed our Constitution, that we've failed the founding fathers. But now I'm seeing that maybe some of the principles upon which the country were founded were inherently flawed. And that makes me less patriotic. It makes me less patriotic because I'm like, have I invested in America the values too much? Should I really appreciate Western values and those inspiring values and get back a little bit more to the basics on that? And I think I probably should. That's not to say that I'm not going to be really depressed when this country fails.
What's one of the values, for example, that the US was built on that you don't align with?
Well, I'm wondering if the Constitution and the ratification even are legitimate. I used to really appreciate constitutional values. I used to think this is what we need to institute in America. But by virtue of our inability to uphold them, doesn't that show an error in the values? We haven't been able to, not just because of outside forces, but because we've strayed from them, in that none of us now voted for these constitutional values. There's just this understanding that that we're going to adhere to them, but there's nothing in place that is going to make us adhere to them. And then with the Chauvin trial and everything like that, and us having a usurper in the highest office, I'm like, well, how can we even all agree that we're going to adhere to constitutional values? I mean,
exactly. And some people would argue on what those constitutional values even are. Like, I wouldn't even say they're clear anymore.
Right.
Everybody has a different interpretation of what our American values are. And so it's just like everyone's sitting at this big table screaming at each other. And that's what it feels like. So
and
I do, totally get that.
And if a new justice comes in or we replace the entire court, and then the value of the Constitution changes based on SCOTUS, then is that really the law of the land? I mean,
And
there's
then
no
are you not a patriot if you don't agree with that?
right. And I'm starting to
Yeah.
think maybe I'm not. Maybe I'm not. I don't know.
Well, I mean, depending on how they changed it, then who knows? Because yeah, we've seen all these things like they want to have what, like 13 Supreme Court
Right.
justices or completely abolish the Electoral College, all this like crazy, crazy stuff that nobody seems to be making a big deal about. But I don't doubt that they would succeed in doing stuff like this. So I absolutely think that the US is in decline and perhaps an irreversible one. We'll have to see. And then, you know, something will be rebuilt from that. But I think patriotism sometimes is the most noble when it is a lost cause. It's not about winning, it's about staying true to what the US, you know, was built on and continuing to stand up despite what happens, despite how hard it gets, because the persecution is insane. Like didn't they just put Nick Fuentes on the no-fly list
I
for like
know.
no reason?
For no
Yeah,
reason.
there's going to be this kind of war on terror thing that we're going to see escalate over the next few years, all on Trump supporters and their, you know, boogeyman white supremacists. And it's going to become really, really, really hard. But the people who continue to stand up, and also very important, focus on family and community. Like there's very few things that are as important, because if you don't have a community and like know your neighbors and people you can rely on and stuff, I feel like you'll be in a lot of trouble if things really go wrong. So that's what I would say. Obviously, you don't have to drop everything and dedicate your whole life to politics, especially now when the price is so high, but at least do something in your local community. That's what I would say.
Right. And I think you're right with your book, with the idea about your book, because we're just regular people. We are, like, I came from a regular family and I
Yeah.
was doing regular stuff with my life and I felt called to do this. But they can demonize anybody for anything. I don't know if you've seen this this tweet. This woman was talking about, and actually the school district that I grew up in Missouri, she was talking about how she doesn't want her kids exposed to critical race theory. And it was really benign stuff that she was saying. And Newsweek is trying to dox her, and it's got 500,000 views on Twitter as of a few days ago. And every comment, although I'm sure Twitter is curating this woman is a racist incognito. She just doesn't know she's racist yet. She doesn't realize and all she said was, I don't want my child exposed to critical race theory. My daughter, who's innocent, feels bad about being white. And it's like, this is the kind of person we're trying to destroy now. Just some mom in Missouri that doesn't want her kid to be a doctor. It's escalated like crazy.
Since even 2016, like this is stuff we were calling out in 2016, like this anti-white narrative that was starting. And it was like, whoa, you're such radical conspiracy theories. And nobody would touch this topic. Nobody mainstream. Anyway, a lot of people did, but it was more like the dissident right type people. Now everybody's talking about it and they see that this is actually going on and that all white people are being taught to hate themselves. They're openly being discriminated against. There's some disabled white farmers suing the Biden administration, because they are explicitly discriminating against white people with the COVID relief bill. If you're white, you can't get the COVID relief. So just this absolutely insane stuff going on right before our eyes. And we're pretending like white people are so privileged and being handed everything. It's complete BS.
Yeah, I know. And then fighting against that just destroys your life. We often talk in private. I don't mean to out you. Like, would we do this if we knew what was going to happen to our lives? And I think I couldn't have done it if I knew what lie ahead.
I think it's a very weird thing, because I would like to think that I would still do it. But when you I think everything that happened to me built me up for what happened next. So if I had seen it all in this huge tidal wave of like horror and pain, like rushing towards me, I'd be like, yeah, I don't know. But, and it's not to say all of it was like that. Of course, I had a lot of amazing times. I met my husband. So of course, not all of it was horrible. Even maybe just a small portion of it was, but it was really horrible. So I don't know. I would like to say I would be courageous enough. I'd like to think and hope so, but it's a lot.
Yeah, it
Yeah, all the
is.
things that happened, I became a little bit stronger after that.
Yeah, that's definitely true. It does prepare you for what comes next. And now I feel like I'm a stronger person than I ever have been. So
Mhm.
I suppose it was worth it, but geez, boy, did we pay.
Yeah.
So what do you think patriotism looks like in the coming years?
Ugh, that's very hard to say. I I think it's very tempting to dream very big. Like I want to become, a governor or a senator or president or the leader of a movement that changes the whole country. It's very tempting to work in that way, but I think we need to work incrementally because this is what the left is in for decades. And that's
Yeah.
why they're in the power that they're in. Have you noticed in the area in Idaho where you live and my family is also close by, the left is everywhere with their little like NGOs and
Yes.
organizations like everywhere. I remember I was invited to speak at what is it, the IHOP. And I was
Yeah.
invited, and some like NGO leftist popped up there to like protest. And I'm like, where did these people come from? Why are they even in Idaho? And we traced them to like working for Soros. And
Oh
I'm just
yeah.
like, this is insane. These people are literally everywhere.
Oh yeah,
And I
there's a
think we
big
need,
historic building, and I was like, "Who occupies?" Because I saw a big "Love Lives Here" sign on it. It's in downtown Coeur d'Alene, and so I start doing some research on it. And it's like SPLC backed. And then I
yeah,
drove past last week, and they had a sign that said, "We are everywhere." It's just hate
yes.
watch for people living
But it
here.
really is. They are everywhere. And I think we need to do the same. So small things like get locally involved in local politics or whatever it might be. And that way you can kind of safeguard your area at least so they don't come take it over because this is exactly what they're doing. They want every corner. They want to leave no stone unturned because that's really where the power lies. If you saw with Trump, he tried to do a lot of things, but he didn't own any of the tentacles. He was just the head and being
Yeah.
controlled because it's not as easy to just go to the top and control everything. But they've, been working at this for a long time while a lot of conservatives have been, doing a very noble thing, having families, going to work. So, but this is kind of where we are now. And I would say this would be a very good thing to do, get involved locally. It doesn't have to be some massive grandiose thing. Also, that will put you on the radar for all sorts of repression that it's very difficult to deal with, especially if you have a family. Like, you think of a scenario where you have some, I don't know if this will happen in the US at some point, maybe like where they just do house raids, but imagine you're there with your family eating dinner and you have like little babies and 8 cops come in and they're digging through your whole house. I know a family this happened to in Germany. It's traumatizing. It's horrible. And not everybody very understandably can deal with that.
Right. But there is strength in numbers, and they can't do this to all of
Yeah.
us. And it is coming for us in the United States.
Yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
but this drives people to extreme measures. Like just the thought of somebody trying to take my child from me fills me with a level of rage that I didn't even know I could have. And I can't be the only one. As soon as they start meddling in people's lives, taking people's children, although I always thought that this tranny initiative with people's kids would turn everybody on the government, and it really hasn't done that. So who knows what people's limits are?
Yeah. I mean, you see all these conservatives and even like Christians that are like Caitlyn Jenner for California. And it's like,
Wait, what?
what's going on, guys?
I
Yeah.
do have a lot of questions in that thread, though, about raising children in this environment because it's we're gearing up to start trying for baby number 2. I can't believe it's already time, but here we are, and I am just filled with fear about raising Emmeline and raising other children, and it's such a happy time in such a dark period in
Yeah.
America's history, and I'm afraid, and so. Oh, how do you deal with that? Are you scared to have children in this political climate? That's the first question.
Yes, definitely.
Mm.
Definitely. But I'm encouraged by the thought that historically people have had it way harder and they've
Way
done it.
harder, yeah. Yeah.
Um, and I'm focusing on community building right now, trying to scope out potential schools, things like that, trying to get it online because it's very difficult here. And homeschooling is also a very difficult thing to do. At least it's not illegal
Really?
like it is in Germany, but it can be done in Austria, but you have to go through a lot of hoops. So
Mm.
we'll see. And I don't know if I'll be good enough to teach German, like school in German. That's kind of a different level. So we'll see. But yeah, I would say because I would be terrified if my child, for example, had to go to like this crazy leftist liberal school.
Yeah.
Then I would be terrified because every day they would be trying to brainwash and indoctrinate into something that is just 100% the opposite of our values and our way of life and our vision for how the world should be. And then they would come home and I'd be trying to undo all that. But then one day, what if your kid comes home and they're a boy and they're like, I think I'm a girl, and they're like 5 years old? Like, what do you do? You know,
Right.
like anybody who thinks a child can make this decision, I just don't. This is madness. This is like peak madness. You wouldn't let a 5-year-old smoke. You wouldn't let
Right.
them drink. Like, why the hell are they going through these transitions that are irreversible?
Yeah.
I really don't get it.
It's outrageous. I mean, I don't understand how anybody could truly believe that, and so I think it's just people that are trying to accrue social points. I
Yeah.
Nobody actually believes this, right? It's preposterous on its face.
Mhm.
But the governments have used children to turn in their neighbors, to turn in their
Absolutely.
parents as little informants, and I think that that's really the long game here. They're trying to take their identities first, and then once they own the identity of the child, then they own the soul of that child. And
Yeah.
then parenthood, what does that mean to them,
Exactly, and they
Um,
can completely destroy the family with that.
yeah, definitely. They
Yeah.
they are trying to destroy the
Mhm.
family. It's the
Yeah.
strongest unit.
And they've
Um,
been largely very successful, but of course, you still have a lot of intact, more, conservative families, or I'm sure there's some on the left too. I don't wanna act like it's only a right-wing thing, or, you know, a lot of, like,
it's
Christian
mostly a
families,
right-wing
Catholic yeah, but I'm sure there's a few here and there. Um,
thing.
and so you still have that there, and they wanna break those apart, and they can do so quite easily if they turn the children against their parents. I've seen
Yep.
this all over TikTok because I use TikTok for that sole purpose, like to look for video ideas and stuff. And I see just the craziest TikToks of these kids, like my parent did this, and my dad kicked me out because I'm a communist, and like just like crazy stuff.
It's just ripping families
Yeah,
apart, isn't it?
yeah, yeah. And
So
I'll never understand that mentality though. How you can place like political ideology over your own parents who like
I
raised you and
know.
sacrificed everything for you for years and years and years. I do not get it. It's so awful. You're a terrible person if you do that.
You have to think that your parents don't know anything, and then you have to think that they don't understand you at all. And that's how they're getting kids. They're saying like your parents are racist, they don't understand anything, and they don't understand you because you have a unique gender identity, blah, 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 that they don't recognize. But really,
Yeah.
just like we looked at our parents and our grandparents, we thought that they were just stupid and technologically, retarded and all this stuff. And then they actually had some real wisdom that we failed
Yeah.
to recognize, like all older generations do.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
we're going to have to face that with our kids. I know it. But how will this change how you raise your child? How are you going to prevent them from seeing propaganda and indoctrination, which happens at so many levels? It's not just school.
Mm. I think I have a pretty good kind of blueprint to follow. I think, with how
Hi,
my
Martin.
parents
Hey.
yeah, I just got home. With how my parents raised us. Like, I didn't get internet till I was 17, 18, or a phone, any of
Really?
that. Yeah, I had a laptop from when I was 15 with no internet to write, but only because I was interested in writing, and I would write all day. I was obsessed, but I wasn't having access to the internet and stuff like that. And I think that's very healthy. So I played outside. We were very creative because we were in a situation where we were encouraged to be creative. If you have, because I've also been a nanny, and the triplets that I babysat for had their like iPads and phones and TV and their Wii and whatever. And they just became so addicted to it. Understandably, it's natural. And I I know sometimes it's hard with moms, especially for a mom and you have triplets all at once, to entertain them all the time. And she did try her best, but they get addicted to that so fast. And I think it will kind of stunt their mental growth. And so I want to keep them away from technology. My husband and I have talked about this as long as possible.
Yeah.
And like the countryside in Austria, there's so much, it's so beautiful. There's so much they can do outside, because we won't live in the city. We're not going to live in Vienna when we have our children. And also finding a good school, Catholic school preferably. And I think those will be two huge things. Also, there's so many amazing families we know, like very wholesome, wonderful families with younger kids. And so our kids won't feel like socially ostracized, like they don't know anybody else. So we don't want to be too strict where they feel like they're like weirdos that can't exist in the world, you know, like everybody else. But we just don't want to let them out into the world like too far, because it's a horrible, horrible place.
I know. Gee. I hate to think
Yeah.
the world is so filled with opportunity and kindness.
Yeah.
And
Isn't it crazy? Or do you have the feeling that like when you were younger, it's like, I want to get out there and explore and accomplish something great. And it's like, now I just want a small town, a simple life,
oh, I
like out on the
know.
prairie. Yeah.
Yeah.
With a church nearby. Yeah.
Exactly.
So I've
That's
had
all
a
I
complete
want.
180.
It's so crazy. I think it's kind of this youthful endeavor though. I mean, when I moved to New York, I remember like getting off the subway and I was like, wow, I could handle a bigger city. Maybe I should move to Paris or I was just totally delusional. And then I just crashed and burned there, just miserable, crashed and burned.
Yeah.
And then I ended up in this small town and I'm so much happier. But do you think that is a part of being young, wanting to take on the world, or can we get our kids to skip this step? Don't do that.
I've seen a lot of successful examples of this. Absolutely. So I have hope, because as bad as things are, there's a lot of amazing young and older children up through like the teens and early 20s that I've met that are just, I'm like, how did you manage this? Because I mean, Vienna and, Austria, like, especially Vienna, it's so leftist here. It's crazy. You just can't escape it. So I'm very impressed, and I think it can be done. But yeah, so I'm not too black-pilled on that one, actually.
Do you think that travel as a child helps?
I think it certainly can, especially if you do it in a very cultural way, where you take them, teach them to appreciate things like a museum. And so I used to be like, boring, this is lame, but now I love it. I love to like go to a museum or see like beautiful architecture and stuff. I genuinely appreciate that stuff now. And I hope that we can instill that in our children to appreciate it. Of course, they'll learn English, they'll know German, and then they'll have to learn a third language in school, and hopefully an instrument, just stuff like that. Because hopefully they can learn to value that. But even if they don't when they're young, they will when they're older. For example, I played piano when I was younger and then ended up stopping. And I'm like, I wish I had kept doing that. But I just went through like, I don't want to play anymore. When you're young, it's normal. But usually parents who force their kids to, then they grow up to really appreciate it later. So kids don't always know, exactly what's best for them. That's the point of having a parent there.
Definitely. So. That's why I'm forcing Emmeline into Irish dance, whether or not.
Oh, very cool. Irish dance is amazing. There were some girls who did that at my old school in California. It was super cool.
Yeah. And I'm not Irish, but she's like 30% or something like that. So
awesome.
So she's gonna do that, and she's gonna like it, and she's gonna hate it,
or else.
I know, but that's how you have to do it. Like my parents forced me to play an instrument, and I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
So yeah, one sport, one instrument, and one language, one additional language, and I think that you can help your children be pretty well rounded, whether or not they want to. But this is a really exciting time in your life, and I'm just wondering if you are experiencing any waves of despair, if you deal with any despair about what's going on in the world, despite it being a really exciting time in your life.
It's super weird because I feel like ever since I found out I was pregnant, I'm way more optimistic and positive and even productive than normal. It's like somebody lit a fire under me ever since the day I found out I was pregnant. They're like, you're supposed to sleep. And I'm like working all day, every day, and I'm not sleeping, but I feel good. I'm very lucky that I haven't been super sick in my first trimester. So I definitely have an advantage there. But it's been different. I'm just more determined than ever to make something good, because yeah, there's so much bad around us, but there's still a lot of positives. Like Martin's family is absolutely amazing. I love his family. They're wonderful. And we have that. And a lot of good friends, a really amazing Catholic community here in Vienna. So I've somehow become way less like frustrated at the state of the world. Even though, yeah, I can't explain it. It's very weird. I've kind of changed in that way. And it's not something I could have predicted, because I would have assumed I would have felt that way. Like, oh, how, I'm so worried for how it's going to be. I'm sure it's going to be very hard, but I'm ready to take it on.
That's true. And when you find out you're pregnant, your world also gets really small.
Yeah.
You just think about trying to create this life for your baby, that you want them to have all these experiences, but you have to do it on such a small local level. You aren't thinking about these huge world issues anymore. I mean, you will when your baby gets a little bit older, but right now it's just about nurturing the life inside you and taking care of yourself, and that is kind of a blessing considering all the things that are happening right now. So maybe this is the best time to be having kids.
Yeah. I think it's a very good time, no matter what. Like, the world is never going to be perfect. It's never going to be the right time or the ideal time that you're just like, this is it. So I think trying to like plan everything all the time is maybe even more exhausting and burdensome. Because maybe you've planned it perfectly, and then the next week, something crazy, terrible, and unforeseen happens. Then it's like, oh no, you don't know what life's going to throw at you.
Definitely. Yeah. I see people our age always trying to plan their pregnancies perfectly around their life circumstances. And they're always like, what do you think you need to accomplish before you get pregnant? I'm like, just get pregnant.
Yeah, that too. Or people think they need so much money. And like, I get it. You do need money, of course. But I see, for example, the Muslim community here in Vienna. And granted, they do have more of a community where they all help each other out. They can trust each other with their kids. They all, kind of hang out together. Like all the women, they're not really allowed to hang out with women who are non-Muslim. At least that was my impression from the German course I took while we were there, because they wouldn't speak to any of us beyond a hello. They were very nice, but I could see that there was like a boundary, a community boundary there. But so, for example, they don't have to pay for babysitting because, right next door, there's a woman with a bunch of kids that will watch yours. They help each other out. This is just kind of how it is. And if you're in a city or something like that, and it's so atomized and you don't know anyone and you have a family and nobody's there to help you, like, it can become very overwhelming. I think, like, in the past, it was always normal to have like grandparents around, parents, brothers and sisters to help out. It was more like a community thing, or your own community, which you kind of have in Idaho there. And which I grew up with because I was in a Catholic community and everyone trusted each other. You could literally drive to a coffee shop and leave your door open and your car on and go in there for 15 minutes and not have to worry that anything bad would happen. But I mean, do that in like a city, it's not gonna, your car's gone.
Yep.
Yeah. So I think this is very helpful. And it makes it so they don't need as much money because they're all helping each other out, even with clothes and whatever it might be.
That's true. I mean, but having a kid, even without all of those resources, it's not really that expensive. People think you need to make so much money. Poor people have kids all the time and it's fine. Yeah. Really
it
poor
depends
people.
on also the standards. Like, what do you want to give your kid? Is it a million lessons and this and that and like ballet and soccer and whatever in the most prestigious school? A lot of people shoot for this. Like, my kid will turn out the best if they're in this private school that's like $100,000 a year and whatever. So this is, I think, where people think they have to make so much money.
That's stupid. If you're a well-rounded parent, then you don't have to supplement so much stuff with your child because you can teach them all the wisdom that you have. Also, with the internet, I mean, you can become an expert in almost anything.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, I don't want to talk too much about motherhood because I wanted you to come onto my channel, Motherland with Robin. We have not made a video in 3 months because we have been spread real thin in our personal lives lately, but we would love it if you would come on and we could continue this conversation about your pregnancy and everything like that. I want to know how it's going and how you feel, and we can talk baby names and all that good stuff. But really, I wanted to get you on today to talk about the state of affairs and your book and all the other exciting things that you have going on in your life. And it has been so lovely to talk to you, and I hope we can do it again sometime. I know you don't do a lot of live interviews, and so I feel really fortunate that you granted me this. So thank you so much.
Of course, yeah. It's mostly because it's kind of hard with the time difference.
Yeah,
because I'm like 9 hours ahead of you, and like so
Yeah.
scheduling it sometimes it can be a bit tricky.
Yeah.
But yeah, I feel like I'm not that good live. I'm
Oh
a
no, this was
writer, so
great.
I like to think about my thoughts a while, because usually right off the cuff, I'm like, wow, I'm an idiot. That sounded really bad. I would have said it this way, just a little bit, a few minutes later. But writing or like filming pre-recorded allows me to really think about what I'm going to say before I say it. So hopefully it wasn't too bad.
No, it was really good.
It
But
was
in the
enjoyable. Okay,
beginning, you were talking about Martin's movement being restricted. And I, for some reason, I wasn't thinking about generation identity. I was thinking about like his physical movement being
Oh no. Although they've kind of in the sense that he's banned from federal buildings, so he can't ever do a
Oh, I think I lost you. Uh-oh. Okay. This is not a terrible time for this to be happening. It's okay. Uh-oh. Well, Brittany, if you can hear me. There we go.
Yeah, I can hear you. Okay. I hear that's weird. Just like slowed for a second, but
okay. Okay. Well, we're wrapping up anyway, so it's all right. No worries. We made it through the interview with our time difference and everything
that it
like
happened
that.
At the end.
Yeah, really. But it was lovely to talk to you, and keep us posted about your pregnancy, and everybody's looking at your Instagram and your lovely little baby bump. It's so exciting. So everybody check out Brittany's links, buy her book, review it on Amazon, only if you're going to give it 5 stars, which you will. And I hope to see you guys again soon. I am coming back on Monday. I'll have Devin Stack Blackpilled on. It's going to be a really late night stream. So check me out then, and we will see you soon. Bye, guys.
Bye.